Greetings and welcome back. I'm pleased today to be joined by Married Red Pill. Now, as his name probably implies, he's a red-pilled guy who happens to be married. And that can be quite the interesting tale or quite the interesting scenario to be in, depending on where you started off with, or where you started out, actually, on your red pill journey. There are all sorts of, I guess, gradations, categories. You wake up or one day and you're red pilled 20 years into a marriage, 5 years before kids, after kids, before you get married. In the case of married red pill, I'm going to ask him a barrage of questions, but I believe he was aware of this stuff before he got married, at least to some degree.
I was, yes.
Yes. So, actually, I guess the best way of starting is, why don't you tell us about how you got red pilled on women and just how you became aware of these things before you even get into marriage, your wife,
I
children.
would say, right. I would say that I'm a skeptical person by nature. I always have been. I always have been the type of person that had to question things, had to feel things out for myself. And the way for the most part, before the actual nomenclature of being red pill came about, I like to say that I was red pilled the hard way. And most people, my age, your age, older, not necessarily young anyways, but didn't have this type of knowledge that we have nowadays with regards to all of the red pill, human biodiversity, female nature things at our will, right? So we had to learn as we went. And for me, it was a very steep learning curve, because I grew up very blue pill, tradcon, religious family, and every experience that I had with women from the time I was a young teenager into my early 20s was very, very, very much a learning experience. And being aware and thinking psychologically and, trying to understand what was happening, what was going on, was kind of what red pilled me in. And I found solace in a lot of the similar, sayings that people have, like you can't make a hoe a housewife, and these type of things that men have known for years and years and years, but you don't really take to heart, like putting the pussy on a pedestal, things like that. I mean, you kind of know these things in the back of your mind, right? And you kind of semi understand them as a guy. But I never really took them to serious heart until I found red pill information. And then it was like finding home. Like it was things that I'd always known, things that I had been conscious of and aware of, but never really had the way to describe it until I found discussions like yours and many others that led me to the MGTOW community and the so-called manosphere, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, growing up, obviously the internet wasn't around, didn't exist. You couldn't just hit a bunch of keys to find a website for anything, let alone understanding the way women tick or human beings tick. Yeah, I think our generation, Generation X,
Yes.
we just missed out on some pretty vital information that the following generation did, by and large, have access to.
Right, and that's why I call it, going red pill the hard ways, because you really had to learn by experience. I mean, the first girl that I fell in love with and lost my virginity to was just playing me as a rebound. she had just broken up with her boyfriend for a couple years. She didn't know any other way to interact with someone other than to stereotypically, of course, we were children. She was a couple years older than me, but just the typical lovey-dovey type of bullshit, basically. And I was none the wiser. This was my first serious girlfriend. I was blue pill tradcon hardcore, religiously based, raised, and she broke me. She broke me hard, because after being together for a couple months, she just dropped me like a dirty towel, and I was head over heels and didn't even know what to think. So from that point on, I really, really took assessment towards female nature, because I never really, well, say never really, I never wanted that to happen to me ever again, right? And I realized that I was completely oblivious to some of the keys that she showed me along the way, towards the fact that I was just a rebound. But being as blue pill cucked as I was at the time, I had no idea, and she broke me. Honestly, it's one of those cliches when you have been around the manosphere for years, and you say you run into people that have had conversations with women and feminists and things like that, and they understand that you're a so-called member of the manosphere, and they say, oh, who hurt you? Honestly, I've never met a man that hasn't been hurt by a woman.
Yeah. Well, I think we should actually, let's dive a little bit into this, because this is an important point. I don't think it's ever really been addressed.
Right.
Between the idea of being quote unquote hurt and getting a certain, or receiving a certain worldview, there's a lot of ground to cover. When women, and typically women, it's women most of the time, men sometimes, mostly women, say, "Oh, you've just been hurt." Yes, the pain, the repetitive pain in many cases, is a source, a driver for moving forward and looking for knowledge, trying to understand things, etc., etc. But it doesn't mean, and because what's always implied in that it's an accusation, it's not an assessment or an observation. At least it's not set that way. The tone is accusatory. Is that the conclusions that you have reached and drawn are just flat out wrong. Now, pain is a great teacher, as a video game character once said. But it's true. You can learn from pain. From the most basic of things, like if you were a moron as a child and stuck your hand in a campfire, well, with luck, you probably learned from that. Hopefully, you didn't get a second or third degree burn as well. Same applies to everything else. It's just that you can learn from those experiences, and it doesn't mean that the information that you've gleaned and the knowledge you've acquired afterwards is incorrect or invalid. But that's always the accusation and the implication when, oh, you've just been hurt. And if you think about it, it's not only just hollow, it's insane. Implied in that accusation is you should just get over your hurt and repeat the same thing you did before that led to that again and again and again, without further investigation, without putting things under the looking glass to see if there's a pattern here, if there's
that's exactly right. And if one thing real quick is I also think that most women understand this as well, right? I think that's their natural reaction to say, "Oh, who hurt you?" It's because it's
their job to hurt men, basically.
Nature. Right. It's their implied nature. They know. It's second nature to them, in a way, or female nature, as you could call it. They probably have empathy towards that person that they've hurt, and they could understand how they had hurt somebody. And what else leads them to the conclusion on whatever the subject that is, that, oh, I'm sorry, you were just hurt. There has to be something behind that, right?
Yeah, why not exactly? Why not something else? Why not? I don't know. You had a bad day, or they don't even really
Why
think
not
much
just say
about.
what happened?
Yeah, what happened? It's the assumption is hurt, but as you pointed out, they are in most cases the deliverer of death blows. So they're and they do so being aware sometimes, even if they're indifferent to the outcome.
Now, see, this was one of the hardest things for me to deal with, the woman that I told you about that I lost my virginity to. She knew all along that this was just a rebound thing. She just wanted me to fuck me because she was attracted to me and whatever her reasons were. But the entire time, she knew this was going to end. She knew this was short time.
Ego
But at the
boost for
same
her.
time, yeah, exactly. But she led me on as to this was something that was going to be long lasting. I mean, as blue pill as I was and as naive as I was making plans for our future. So you can imagine how much it crushed me,
Yeah.
to have this situation. But at the same time, she knew the whole time. She knew. And it was only when it got it was only when she realized that it was getting that serious with me, that I was getting that serious, that she was like, whoa, 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 I need to stop this train now. This is never what I intended. And this was one of the realizations that I came to, which was hard because to me, it was very cruel for her to lead me on in that way and then just stop the train, when she knew the whole time. Because if she would have, had a conversation with me at the beginning, hey, we're going to go to some dances, school dances, and, I'm going to take your virginity. Are you cool with that? And then, we'll leave it at that after a couple months. I probably would have been cool with that too.
Yeah.
But the way that it turned out actually worked out more beneficial towards me in the end, in some ways, because I learned more about female nature, and every consecutive relationship that I had after that was another learning experience. And through those relationships that I had, I became red pill. I became aware of female nature. I understood the ins and outs of relationships, what women really wanted, and what they wanted in different age groups too. I understood that young girls were, naive and silly and exploring their sexuality, and that blossomed into girls in college age who were just riding the cock carousel and exploring their sexuality even more to what I would consider, slut phase. And after that, that was more of the settling down, getting into the career, finding men to sport fuck and things like that, until they got to the point where they were coming closer to the age of 30, and then they realized that they've been sport fucking around all their life and have never had any serious prospects or men that they would consider settling down with. Maybe there were a few, but they never really considered it at the time because they were too busy riding the cock carousel and sport fucking everyone. And now the motherly instinct kicks in, and they all want to.
Well, motherly
find
is one way of
somebody
putting
and
it.
settle down.
Right. It's just it's a
You know,
repetitious and predictable pattern that most women in modern era go through. I mean, they just realize that they've effectively been wasting their time. I mean,
but one of the aspects of that is when I figured this all out, I started in my early 20s finding and dating women that were in their late 20s, just because I knew that they were more down to earth, if you can say. Not really, but knew more what they wanted. And yeah, it's just one of those things that you kind of learn as you go. I think it was more a factor of me getting tired of the cock carousel bullshit and these younger women that had no idea what they wanted and were just complete sluts. And I've had conversations with you before about these women and their descriptive nature and the the lack of decency that any of them have in a way.
Well, to be fair, I've often drawn this analogy. I don't mistrue human beings in general, but we're animals, and they're just not really thinking very much about their behavior or the impact of their behavior. They're just doing what comes naturally to them and following their instincts, and the same way a dog would do so, or a bear, or anything else for that matter. It's just what they do. It's not. I mean, in some sense, this has been talked to death, but the whole how feminine, quote unquote, feminism screwed over women, blah blah blah. Well, yeah, I mean, if a woman had her best interests in mind, she wouldn't be spending any time riding any carousel, cock or otherwise. She would, in her early, I would say maximum mid-20s, be looking for the workhorse provider, or whatever, however you want to term it, who's going to, pay the bills when she pops kids out. So it's all set up for her, rather than just exploring lots of things, because the exploration doesn't really lead anywhere. And unlike men who have a kind of a, it's much more difficult to acquire sex as a man than as a woman. That's part of why it's men who have lots of sex are viewed in a positive light, whereas women are obviously viewed as sluts.
Right.
There are only really negatives to what's now, we could almost call it traditional patterns, say the last 20, 30 years, in terms of women exploring their quote unquote sexuality, getting on the cock carousel, then enter a new phase, and then just panicking as the wall is about to collapse in on them. But there's no instruction manual for them either. In fact, society has told them otherwise. Men have been told, of course, that we need to be nice and whatever, simps effectively, and then women are just told that they can do whatever they want and it'll just somehow work out. So it is curious though, but these things you seem to realize before anything really was on the internet about this stuff. I mean, if it only took one experience, because a lot of guys, geez,
it was more than one experience.
Well, I mean, in terms of, I had maybe 3 or 4 serious whatever that means, serious, longer term, more than a year,
right?
Serious relationships, until I realized that there's a recurrent pattern in certain things these women are doing, other women that I had more casual things with, etc., etc. It wasn't just that one. So for my very first girlfriend, late teens, early 20s, my first whatever you want to call it, everything, blah blah blah. She was very unstable, maybe even mad and insane, had some slightly violent tendencies. Slightly, well, that's being generous. And I didn't necessarily extrapolate from that to say, oh no, I just thought, oh, she was crazy. But apart from the overt violence on occasion, I would say that there were these recurrent patterns, but it took me a hell of a long time to realize this stuff. In fact, I don't think I was really aware of it until my late 20s, when it's a complicated story, but I thought at the time I had a girlfriend, but in actuality she was engaged to somebody else who was abroad. Well, we were all abroad, but he was abroad and whatever, and so I was, none the wiser, he was none the wiser, and, well, she was wise to all of us. So I was she almost spelled this out to me. I was the interesting, exciting guy, and he was the stable workhorse provider guy that she had lined up for the future, and she ended up marrying him and popping kids out with him and, turning her back on me. But after that, that's when things really clicked for me, and I realized, there's something going on here. So
that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was lucky in a lot of ways in I don't know. I think I attribute it to my skepticism that I've always had since, I mean,
Oh,
I
same.
remember,
I
right.
don't want to interrupt, but I think past mid-20s, I was already heavily purple pilled. I've mentioned this a million times, but I'll see all these magazine covers where men were being criticized or denigrated, and it was just this. It was too repetitive and too omnipresent for me to not notice what's going on here. So I definitely was already skeptical too. Yeah.
Right. And in America now it's getting worse. It seems like every commercial you see on TV with a man and a woman is, it's
Is it
critical
actually
of the
worse
man
now?
and
That's
what.
interesting.
Oh, no, it is worse now. It's crazy. I've been pointing it out to my wife for years, and it's only recently that she's like, you're right. I never really paid attention to it before, but yeah, you're right. And of course, I've been married for quite a while now, going on 13 years, and I point these things out to my wife all the time ever since I've been officially red pilled, But yeah, I've even mentioned a number of times that I'm working slowly. It's a slow process, but I'm working on red pilling my wife as well. And most of the stuff she understands. But yeah, a lot of those experiences that I had when I was younger that led me to, red pill knowledge were the types of things that led me to the in-depth, serious vetting that I decided to take when I decided to, move forward with looking for a mate, because I'd always known that I wanted to have children. Call it biological. I don't know what it is. I've never really cared about passing on my genes. I've never looked at it in that way. Maybe it's because I never had any brothers that I always wanted to have sons that I could pass information on to. Maybe it's genetic. I don't know. I've never been able to explain it. It's just one of those male things that natural human things, I guess, that you want to pass on, right? I've always wanted sons, and so I always knew that I wanted to have children. Now, today, we're looking at some prospects in the future towards having children that, were not even considerable options when I was a kid. I mean, the artificial womb is on the horizon. You could have a surrogate in another country. None of those were even considered options when I was younger. So I knew that if I wanted to have children, I wanted to have children in a patriarchal marriage. I wanted to live in a patriarchy. I wanted to have a wife who stayed home, who took care of the children and raised them, and raised my children. So understanding the landscape of the sexual marketplace through my red pilling as a hard red pilling, understanding female nature and all these other things, I really, really wanted to make sure and vet very hard any woman that I would even consider coming close to being the mother of my children. And I realized a long time ago as well that if I never found that woman and I never had children, well, then so be it.
Yeah.
But I had standards. I had very, very strict standards, and I happened to find those standards. And some of those standards were because of the religion that I was based in or brought up in that I left. But I don't really want to get into the religious discussion on it, but I do have to thank the religion that I am a part of, because it holds down those social pressures on my wife, my marital status, and the things like that continue that patriarchy, right? And that's part of the reason that I'm still there. So I'm very open-minded towards a lot of things, but I still don't. Now, what am I trying to say? I don't disvalue the idea of the religion as a helping point, right? I don't. Yeah.
Well, even if you're completely irreligious, and as I am, you can still see value or the utility. Things are really useful. Now, do I believe in most religious, say, metaphysics? No, absolutely not. But still, I mean, there are a lot of useful things to it. What are, when you said you had high standards, you were vetting the people you're encountering, the women you're encountering. What were some of those ingredients that went into this recipe that ultimately led you to choose one particular female and then settle down with her?
Well, I tell you, the most important one was patriarchy. Honestly, in the natural sense of patriarchy, because that's what I wanted. That's what I was looking for. I would not accept any woman that had come from any type of a broken home. Her parents had to be still married. Her family had to respect her father and look at him as the valuable patriarch of the family. And she had to love her father. We know women look for men that are like their father. So, it's always the common trope to say, oh, yeah, look at the mother, right? Look at the mother-in-law. If she's fat after so many years and blah, 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 that's what the wife is going to look like, probably. I didn't care about the mother or the mother-in-law at all. I cared about the father. I cared about, did she love her father? Does she respect her father? Does she look up to her father? Is her father a good leader and patriarch of the family? And, is the family still together? Right there, just that. I just eliminated like 99.9% of all women in America.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in, a religious neighborhood and understanding of this religious foundation, and there really was not a lot of divorce around me, and I understood that. But every single person that I knew that was not religious had been broken in some way, or received or been a part of a divorce, right? And that affected me as well. Even though I didn't experience it a lot in my closer inner circles, I understood that is a huge effect on people. And I mean, if you look at the statistics nowadays, I mean, even within close family units, if one family member gets a divorce, the likelihood of another family member getting a divorce within that immediate family is like 70%. It's ridiculous. So, like I say, I mean, this is what I wanted. It all kind of centered around the patriarchy. And when I say the patriarchy, I mean a providing father and a caring mother who stays home and raises the kids, and finding a woman that actually wanted to live in that lifestyle. It's tough. It's tough. I do consider myself lucky in a little ways. I do consider myself lucky in a little bit, but you never know. I mean, someday it may happen, someday it may not. And that's why I look back on it and say, well, if it never happened, then I would have been okay with it, because I have my own hobbies. I have, all of these things that I do. I'm a man of many, many different aspects and hobbies and things. And I love my personal time, and even married, I love my personal time. And I find that personal time brings me back to, good time with my wife, because that separation causes you to want each other more. It's crazy in the way that it works, but when it really comes down to it, I think the most important thing was wanting to live in a patriarchy, and finding a woman that wanted to live in a patriarchy is the hardest thing, because you have to find a woman who grew up within a patriarchy and respects and loves her father to even consider wanting to live within a patriarchy and raise children.
I think you said your wife comes from the same religious denomination as you?
She does.
Right.
She does. We were both raised Mormon, but both of us left the church. And, that makes it even more uncommon. We both left the church. We both decided that we wanted to raise our children within the church for the simple aspect of the moral reasoning. I mean, it's not like I can't teach my children morals, but it's very simple. It's very easy to be raised with other children who are taught the same moral aspects as you, and have those good influences and those good moral people around you as you're being raised. And if my children decide, as I did, when they get later in their teenage years and things like that, that they question it, they want to move away from the church and do other things or explore other things, I have no issues with that. I will support them in whatever they want to do, because again, myself, I question it myself. I left the church. I left, my Christian church years ago, Mormon, but I left it years ago, and we decided, both my wife and I, to come back to the church because it is beneficial, I think, in twofold. In one, raising the children, and in the second, in enforcing that scarlet letter type social pressure that holds people to their relationships, right? And the Mormon Church actually has a really, really great way of taking people out of the real world and putting them into the Mormon world, in the way that in the Mormon Church, nobody is really paid. Nobody's paid for their position, but everybody has a position. Everybody has a job within the church. I mean, there are some, higher ups that work for the church and stuff that are paid, but most of the everyday, day-to-day conditioning of taking care of the buildings, scheduling people to talk, who's going to teach preschool, all of these things are all handled by the parishioners of the church. So if you really want to, you can delve into this society completely, to where everything in your life is only centered around what's going on in the church, right? And you can completely put out the outside world. And I really think it's brilliant in a lot of ways, in the way that they do that, and involving yourself in the church in just that's particular, any particular way, that particular way, or any particular way. There are so many programs and other things that involve you so much that you can literally spend every bit of your waking time outside of work and other family obligations in just being involved in church activities, and essentially take yourself out of what's really going on in the natural world and things like that. And that social isolation helps within that patriarchal relationship in holding cue to the social pressures of outside, right? You essentially isolate yourself so much that you're not even involved with what's going on outside in the outside world, whether it's politics or anything. And that can have a significant effect on your relationship and the people that are influencing your relationship, the social pressures, the scarlet letter effect, right? So a normal patriarchy within just normal society, yeah, it can work, but it won't work as well as within a, tightly bound religious community like, Mormon communities are. And this is exactly what my wife and I chose to go back to that community to raise our children. Now, at the same time, I must say I'm very skeptical. I don't know exactly where I stand because, again, I'm always a skeptical person. I'm always questioning. Every time I go to church and I hear this and that or whatever, I'm always questioning. And I just kind of put it in the back of my mind, leave it off to whatever. Sometimes I broach the subject, but it's always one of those things that I'm questioning. I'm always questioning because I have sympathy towards everything. I am the type of person where I will listen to everything. If you've got a good point you want to bring towards me about atheism, I'll listen to you. Maybe, we can have a conversation about it, but at the least point, I'll listen to you. I don't have any issue towards it. I have my own presuppositions about things that have been destroyed over the years. And I still, in some ways, am lost towards some things. Like I said, I have those presuppositions. You spoke about this in a video recently,
right,
why we can't get along because, people have these presuppositions. I always try to put those to the side. I always will entertain conversation about why things are the way that they are. And that's just the skeptical part of me. So I've always been skeptical of my church. But the reason that I went back is for the purposes that I explained before, the patriarchy and the raising of the children. And that's just as simple as it is. I don't know after my children leave the home or whether they leave the church early in their teenage years, whether I'll even go back to the church. I'm not 100% sure. There's a good community there, but I'm not 100% tied to it, and who knows what the future will tell.
Okay, so that's the religious aspect. And what about, you mentioned earlier that you started looking into older women. I would presume, I think you've told me that your wife is actually older than you and by a fairly significant margin.
That is true. My wife is older by...
Sorry, you cut out there for a second. Can you, how much,
Yes.
How much older?
Yes, my wife is older than me by 6 years.
Okay, yeah. So that's atypical, to say the least.
It is. And honestly, that's what I was looking for. Because like I was saying before, I got tired of the, college age women when I was college age who were riding the cock carousel and doing all these types of things. I also had come to the point at that time that I was tired of that type of lifestyle and those type of women. And I started looking towards older women because older women kind of knew what they wanted. And by this time, I also knew what I wanted. I was lucky in a way to find her, but the looking towards older women was me just putting the bullshit aside. It was these younger women and their cock carousel riding and everything else that it was just putting the bullshit aside. I always enjoyed dating and looking for older women because, well, in one way, I mean, I had my own, male cock carousel rides, in looking for women to bang, and I found it easier to find women to bang in the older age group. But
right. I don't want to go too much on a tangent, but I'll never forget the story that you told me a while back. Now, you correct me if I'm wrong. I think you were working. It wasn't as a taxi service, but it was you were shuttling. College females from different destinations or something to that effect. I don't remember the details. But maybe if you could allow the audience some insight into that? I mean, and some of the things that you overheard, just to show how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was trying to quit drinking actually. So late at night drinking, I decided to take a job Uber driving. And I found that very fun because I enjoy, talking with people and having conversations and things like that. And what I found was I really hated driving around college towns because the college women that I would pick up were just, they were vicious. They were so horrible. None of them would have conversations. And even worse than that, they would have conversations in the back of the car when I got a group of them in the car that no man would even consider having a type of conversations that I would hear. I mean, normal guys, when they talk about their conquests and sleeping with women, they say, oh yeah, so-and-so, I hooked up with this chick, or I hooked up with that chick, or whatever. We had a good time. Nothing like that of the sort. These women got into extreme detail about who they were going to have sex with that night and who they were going to, perform fellatio on.
And they were actually arguing or fighting with each other about whose cock. Whether Mary or Anne was going to suck Josh's cock or something to that effect, right?
That is exactly right. And they would describe, I sucked his cock the other day. It's all right. Maybe you don't want to bang him. He probably won't, satisfy you. But yeah, he's a nice guy. Maybe you could suck his cock. Maybe you could get something out of him, But then other women would be like, oh, well, I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna go bang this dude and that dude, and I'll probably let him do anal with me and all of this and that. And I was floored. I as a guy, I've never heard this type of conversation. I mean, you talk about locker room talk and things like that. I've never heard this type of conversation as I have with the crudeness of women, and it brings me back to the whole Trump grabbing the pussy type of thing because, I think in reality, the whole reason that everybody was upset about that on, women on their side is because of projection, right? They understood that these women are they're just sluts. They're thoughts. They're rap video type of chicks that just go after any guy with money or whatever and will let anyone do anything with them. And that's what Trump is describing. And that's all he did. He described that. He was like, yeah, you could do whatever to him. You could grab him by the pussy, but even still, that's just a description. That doesn't mean he did anything. But if you actually listen to women who don't think that there's no one around listening, they talk even worse than that. And that's why I think it's just projection. Yeah, it was a fun experience, definitely, being an Uber driver and hearing all of these types of conversations.
Yeah. And it's initially, you're probably not surprised anymore if you hear things like that, but it was quite the shock. Well,
I wasn't even really, too blown away at the time because, again, I had these types of conversations and, things like that with women when I was that age. And that's one of the things that led me to not even have any desire to be around these type of women when I was that age. And I always looked for older women.
Right. Now, you've given a pretty good description of your circumstances and how you were red-pilled over time after the marriage. But there are a lot of guys who are married who are maybe not as red-pilled who, they don't take a particular liking to, I guess you could say, the more MGTOW related aspect of things. I've met many of them. Or rather, I've encountered them online. Particular, in real life too, on occasion, very hostile, and just very aggressive sometimes. Now, you seem to be, because you're aware of these things, of a different disposition. You seem to not have that outright hostility towards MGTOW-minded men, because you understand not just how risky it is, but just what it all involves. I mean, maybe you can go into some details. For example, Rollo Tomasi, he'll talk about gaming his wife and things like that. But more importantly, the one thing that Rollo Tomasi never really brings up, and I think it's because it might put him in a weak position if he actually overtly, directly said this, is that in a legal sense, his wife owns him. He might right. be the patriarch. He might game her really well, but all he needs is for her to get Uncle Sam behind her, and he's going to lose what he has. So
well, that's any woman, really.
Exactly, but that's the whole point, right? And that's why I think guys like the sort of marriage game thing, it's great, but it doesn't change the legal reality.
It's hard.
Yeah.
No, it is hard. And that was one of the hardest realizations we came to the idea that, or came to the realization of true red pill nomenclature. And like I say, when I found your channel, I was led to your channel by Karen Strawn's channel. I would say that I was red pilled by the both of you. And that's one of the hard things to realize, is that even though you're married like I am, this shit could end at any time. And that's why I went into this, extreme vetting. It was benefiting the costs and the losses and what I would lose if I did. And I've always been aware of this situation, and I've always hedged my bets, right? And that's why I went into extreme betting. But Rollo Tomasi, he's got some good content. He seems to have a fair nature, understanding of female nature and whatnot. But I would agree that he's very much a controlled by his marriage.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. A lot of these guys who for years were PUA bloggers, or at least advocates of PUA, are now married because they've realized that, once you fucked one smelly fish hole, they're kind of all the same, right? So you got to move on and move.
They are, and yeah. I can appreciate some of their wisdom,
right?
Because some of that wisdom they have passed on from the PUA game to the marriage game.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not trying to undercut that. It's just that,
right? But of course, they're not promoting the marriage. But it's just some of them are married, right?
Rollo Tomasi is. There's another guy. What's his name? He begins with R too. What's his name? In any event, there are a couple of these prominent bloggers who are now married. Where do you go after you fucked a million holes? Nowhere you get married, right? Because right. These guys still, and this is my disagreement with them, think that the most important thing you can do is get laid. In some sense, it's their, okay, now that they've gotten laid enough, that's their primary focus. Most of them have a disparaging attitude towards MGTOW in general. And as I think most people know, MGTOW isn't really focused on anything other than kind of doing your own thing. It certainly isn't focused on obsessing about vagina, but that's always been my beef with PUA, that it's just, to my mind at least, an incomprehensible obsession with just getting laid. But I imagine it's just as I can't really understand an alcoholic very well, it would be the same issue. I've just never been that obsessed with that.
Right.
But
Sorry, go ahead.
No, and one thing that they'll never, it doesn't matter, and this is a fact, it doesn't matter how great your game is. It's never, there's no one's game is perfect. The reality remains, the reality of the legal system, that effectively, no matter how great you game your wife has more rights and more authority than you have in an external sense than you might want to at least admit publicly.
That is very true. And that was one of the hardest realizations that I came to, being MGTOW, is no matter what, and I do in some ways game my life. I must admit, because the reality is playing with women is a game. It is in all sense, and just like Barbarossi say that it ain't worth the squeeze. To some men, to some men it's not worth the squeeze. And I totally understand that. And that is why I support and am sympathetic towards MGTOW. Because guys don't want to deal with that. And you spoke on it very well recently in talking about having things to be attracted to. Most guys don't have things, and they focus on putting the pussy on the pedestal. And
that's my idea of PUA, is that maybe some of them have hobbies or whatever, but I've never heard a PUA say, you better crack open that particle physics book. I just can't wait. It's always,
right. It's always pussy.
Yeah, always. Yeah.
It's always pussy. It's always something. It's always putting the pussy on the pedestal. With PUAs, it's always getting the pussy, and now some of these guys like Tomasi and those, they've moved.
Royce,
on
that was the other guy. Royce, he's married too, apparently.
Yeah. Actually, it's interesting, man. I mean, in a lot of ways, I look at what they do now as just some type of a game. Right? They're just trying to make money. They're just older. Yeah. They're just trying to make money. They're gaming, in a way, the incel community, right? Because any guy who can get a chick knows that you don't have to try to get a chick.
Yeah, and this is something,
woman, right? It's the incels that really need the coaching and the help to understand.
Well, let's define need. I think this. I've talked about incels off and on the last couple of months, ever since these incidents occurred. You probably checked those videos out, but there's good-looking people, men or women. They don't need coaching. It's just a fact. If you're a good-looking guy, unless you're a complete buffoon or you have you're a retard, it's not rocket science. You'll probably end up getting some attention from women.
Right.
If you're not a good-looking guy, depending on how bad-looking you are, you can mitigate that. Let's say you're only average-looking, borderline average, but man, you work hard. You're really smart. You have a great investment portfolio. Yeah, you could. You'll be able to buy your way into pussy, probably, whether it's direct prostitution or the more conventional, societally sanctioned type of prostitution we call relationships. Now, if you have...
One of the things that I was going to say about that is you cannot underestimate indifference.
Yes.
Indifference towards women. Oh, my God. If you're indifferent towards women... because they have their conquest too, right? If they like you and you're indifferent towards them...
If they like you, but what's the prerequisite from them liking you? If you're not a good-looking guy or even below average, they're not going to like you in the first place. In fact, that's the whole situation. People talk about indifference. That should always be, to my mind, paired with, if you're good-looking enough or, for whatever, attractive enough, I'll use that term because that combines a number of different attributes, attractive enough, and then you're indifferent, yeah, great. But if you're not that smart or not that wealthy and below average, you're just going to be invisible. It doesn't matter. So, and this is something that I don't really approve of, this idea of trying to sell snake oil. Look, people don't like a message of despair, but the reality is that, and this is even the mainstream does it with these incel guys, is all you need to do is buy a decent suit, put your shoulders up, stand proud, get a decent job, go to the gym, and all these women will... No. There are reasons why they have these problems. Some of them might be mental, but a lot of them are just, they got a shit hand dealt to them by genetics and reality, and they're trying to cope with it. and no amount of coaching or gaming is going to change that. And the idea that would change, well, that's effectively, to me, just selling a faulty product. That's like saying, selling you a pair of wings and telling
It's
you
like
you
the
can fly
push-up
over.
bra.
Yeah, I think it's
Well-
worse. It's because these guys, their entire life, these incels, they seem to be so obsessed with this. Not all of them, but it's like saying, well, I have these clip-on wings, and if you put them in on your back, you'll actually be able to fly, and it's the thing you want to do most. You really want to fly. Instead, you're just going to fall on your face and maybe die. That's because I think it's actually more pernicious than something like a push-up or whatever. I can't say I really approve of that. I think, and a lot of these incels, they already know that. They know. I've never looked at these forums, but I've been told by people who check the forums out, or these the quote unquote communities, that they know they're being sold snake oil by, say, PUAs, and they certainly know they're being sold snake oil by the mainstream. That they just need to do a couple of things and they'll be fine. Unfortunately, life does not distribute talents and good fortune in equal measure, and I just wish we could get past, and this applies to greater society, get to the point where we just acknowledge that, some people were really unlucky, and the way to improve on that is not to lie to them about their circumstances, which is effectively what I think most mainstream and PAs are doing in these cases. Sorry, it's a bit of a rant, but it's a point that irritates me.
No, that's fine. I completely agree with you. I can relate that to a couple instances. I mean, it's like the fat acceptance movement nowadays. People saying, well, it doesn't matter that you're fat. It doesn't matter that you're unhealthy. Everybody has to just accept you for who you are. But that's not the actual truth. We're actually lying to those people.
With one huge difference, I might add, that
Right.
there's a superficial agreement that everyone will lie about the fat acceptance, most people in the mainstream, whereas it's quite the opposite with incels, right? It's, man up, do this, buy a suit, hit the gym, get a real job.
Well, at the same time, they're also forgetting about some people that are incels, not by their own choice. I mean, in some instances, incels are former Marines who were, had their arms and legs blown off and were mainly burned and things like this. I mean, those people deserve every sympathy that we can give them, and they are lumped into this group of just, people that say genetically lost the lottery, and there's no sympathy given towards them. I've seen many articles, denigrating TFLs, and there's no sympathy of any kind given towards any type of guys like this. They associate them with the MGTOW, and they say these are all just men who can't get women, and this and that.
Because there's a deeper symbolism behind that, and we have to understand that you need to understand, and one needs to understand what the value of a man is. The value of a man is a non-constant, number one, because it's always attached to how much you are of use to the external world. It's an external value, whereas women's value is internal. It's all based on the womb. It all goes back to our very basic biological functions. And if you're the type of guy who can neither produce wealth nor looks or whatever, I mean, you're at the bottom of the bottom. It means you're not giving value to anyone. You're not giving value to women. You're not spreading your wealth to the rest of society. You're not building anything. You're just, and unlike a woman who could still be impregnated, you're offering absolutely nothing, because you don't. Men have no internal value. It's entirely external. So,
and this is where the criticism.
Yeah.
Do some PUA stuff. Get a suit.
Right. Well, right. This is, add external value to yourself. And it's true that, I mean, it's not just theoretical. The only value you can accrue as a man is external value, and it's non-constant. You always have to fight to maintain the value, be it looks, fighting the age game, wealth, maintaining your wealth, increasing your wealth, etc., etc. So they're not incorrect when they say, well, and if you got a proper job and you went exercise, I'm not saying it would help necessarily, because some of these cases are just, frankly speaking, too far gone. But yes, that the only way to improve on yourself is to add external value, because you certainly have no intrinsic value. No man has intrinsic value because you don't have a womb. So you have to work on building that extrinsic value. But yeah, and this is where the huge a woman. So even a fat woman or grossly, or I mean, you see them all the time. They get knocked up. They still have a function as a mother, right? But not to say
they do. And in society, we always question who's the guy that knocked up that fat woman.
Yeah, right. And some and hypergamy being what it is, sometimes they actually acquire, men who, by all rights, probably shouldn't be together with them, but lo and behold, they are. This is. So that's it's not really a paradox. That's the apparent contradiction, because it's okay. You're grossly overweight, you're obese, but that's okay. You should be accepted. Oh no, you're this. Don't be that. And that's just I think a function, a byproduct of our innate psychology. You can't. Well, we're not going to erase it anytime soon. It's just something we just need to accept. That's, I think, what a lot of, I don't want to get too much into red pill rage, but
right.
Red pill rage, and a lot of guys thrive off of it and just maintain it for years. As you know, I'm a very sort of calm, I'm pretty much a cool cucumber. I don't get too upset about too many things.
Yeah,
at a brief
I'm
phase,
the same way as you.
Yeah, but I can understand, where does it come from? It comes from that sense of powerlessness, impotence, that whatever you do, you're always going to be from that zero starter point of having not effectively no intrinsic value. And the rage comes from, maybe you had wealth at some point in time, but shit, you lost it. Maybe you were a gambling addict. Maybe you made a bad investment, whatever. And all of a sudden, everything you've had, you've lost. Whereas if you're a decent looking woman with a womb, you always be able to hang on to that. And so
you don't even have to be a decent looking.
Well, not even. I'm trying to be charitable, but
right.
Yeah, sure. So that's that rage. I'm not going to say it's justified, because who knows what's justified and it's not. It's all subjective. What's justified and whatnot, that's subjective. But it's understandable, because
that's very true.
It's red pill rage. It's like manifesting. It's like you're the mortal raging against the storm god who's just throwing gales at you and hurricanes, and he's being really fucking unfair about it. Like, you've had a shitty week, I don't know, you're running a farm, right? And your crops are ruined, your livestock's been slaughtered, and to add insult to injury, right. he's chucking hurricanes at you, and you're really pissed off. But it doesn't matter, because you're not going to change the storm god's preference in the fact that he's doing that to you. And that's what that is. And it can be a source of motivation, but I think that's the huge issue when it comes to not understanding. People get in red pill rage, they don't understand where it's coming from. If you're a really successful guy, I've encountered guys online and in real life that have affected. Some of them have actually been models, and others have been just really good-looking guys. They don't comprehend, and so. The cards are just
I deal with a lot of these guys on a regular basis. I'm a mod on a few other channels on Discord, and when I first came on, a lot of people wanted to know my story. I made a video on my channel. I literally only have one video on my channel kind of explaining my story, so I could just kind of lead people towards that and they could listen to it. And then from that point on, I mean, once I got past the point of people trying to understand my story, I really, really enjoy talking with people online, on Discord, on, various different communities, in helping men through their red pill rage. Because I had a bit of my own red pill rage. I mean,
I think everyone's had it for a little bit, at least. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, despite my knowledge, right, of female nature and the truth of human biodiversity and sexual economics, I mean, I was in one of the hardest positions you could be because when I became red pill, I mean, like truly red pill, I was already married. I was already in the throes of the depths of, these things. And there was nothing I could do about it. There's no, you know, I have a better way out. I have a change for this. No, I got married knowledgeably to have children. And I still, I have people argue with me who take the men going their own way uh, nomenclature literally and say that, well, I'm MGTOW because I knew what I was doing when I got married and decided to have children. But I don't ascribe to that. And I do end up spending a lot of time and enjoy spending a lot of time helping people through their red pill rage because it's an understanding that, women aren't just the way that they are.
Yeah.
The only reason that you're upset about it is because you had some blinders pulled over your head through society or religion
Yeah, it's
or
like getting
whatever
angry at the
it may
storm.
be that
Yeah.
yes
Storm's not going to change. Still going to
No.
shock you and get you drenched. Yeah.
exactly. So that's mostly what the red pill rage comes down to is these men not being able to cope with the reality of things that human nature is human nature, female nature is female nature. It's that they were lied to all of their lives, that there was something better, that things would be different, and it's not that way. And that is really what leads to a lot of this red pill rage. And I really enjoy helping guys through that red pill rage because there's something to be said for the calm when you come to the other side of it and you have an understanding. And I mean, even myself as a married guy, I understand, right? I know the situation that I'm in. I've come to terms with the realities in looking forward and being a forward looking person, that if this were to happen, I'm okay, I'm prepared. If that were to happen, I'm okay, I'm prepared. I know what's coming. Whereas like at the beginning of our discussion, when I was talking about the woman that I lost my virginity to, I was completely blindsided. I had no idea. Now I do. I understand. And that's part of being red pill, part of understanding female nature, or part of looking forward to what may come, right? And that doesn't mean you have to be some type of prepper and put money in different accounts and things like that. It's not a stupid thing to do, if you think that something's going to happen, but at least being mentally prepared, because the mental preparedness is exactly what the red pill rage is. It's the lack of mental preparedness. You didn't know that things were the way that they were because you've been lied to all your life, and now that your eyes have been opened, you are pissed off because they're not the way that you saw them. The life plan that you had for yourself is not.
Let's add a little twist there, and it's less the way. It's actually not the way they saw it. The people who feel that way, and it could apply to many different things, not just this. They
True.
were told the world was a certain way. Only they went looking for it. So they were looking for this picture, the portrait, this painting that had been handed to them by the world at large, by society, by their parents, their friends, everybody. And they kept on trying to find it. They could never find it. And so the fact is that they were not seeing what they were told they should be seeing, because let's be honest, it never was there to begin with. That's the issue. They were told it's a it's a bright, sunny day. Not that I'm a fan of the sun, brightness or otherwise, but most people are. A bright, sunny day when in fact it's cloudy and raining. They just keep on. But where's the sun? Where's the sun? Where's the blue sky? And but no, it's there, it's there. And you just, but it's raining. And every time I go outside, I'm getting drenched because I don't have an umbrella. But it's no, you're wrong. It's not raining. But look at me. My shirt is drenched through. I water all the. No. It's sunny. Believe me. That's the issue, right?
Right. It's all a delusion. It's all, false.
Yeah.
A false reality, in a way.
Yeah. It's fairly insane. I want to just move because we do have a somewhat limited time to go. What do you tell your sons? What do you tell your sons? Because you have 2 sons and 1 daughter. Your sons
Correct.
are, they're male, so they're in for a rougher time than your daughter will ever be. That's a fact. So what do you tell them about? I mean, they're very young now, so I'm going to tell them now what you plan on telling them in the future.
I plan on red pilling them. I plan on not pulling any punches and not giving them any bullshit. I have good conversations with my sons, and I look at it very similarly to the knowledge that I pass on to them about the world, about machining, about anything that I do. I have many hobbies. I do machining, I do jewelry, I teach them, right? I give them things in their life to do, hobbies, things like that, and when I'm talking to them and when I'm explaining things, I look at it in the exact same way that I'm explaining to my son how to use a lathe, the way that I explain to him how life really is. I don't pull any punches. I tell him how it is, how it should be done, how things work, right? Some people, they lie to their kids. They pull these
Sure.
blinders over, right? I don't do that. The only thing that I do is use discretion towards their age. And because I talk to them and I have good communication with them, I know where they are in their life experience, what they know about life and reality and things like that. So in that way I can be discreet about how much information I give them. But like I said, I mean, my children are still young. My oldest son is about to turn 11. He still is very naive, and I like that. I don't want him to, be succumbed to all of the evils of the world, if you want to call them that, quote unquote, whatever. As he gains knowledge, I am there as a guide and a parent to help him. And we have a good relationship to where he will come and ask me questions. And that's what I always wanted as a parent, especially one who is a father of sons, right? I mean, I always wanted to be able to teach and share and share my knowledge. And I just have to be discreet about the way that I do it and the timeline that I do it. But having good communication with my sons gives me that opportunity to teach them things that as they grow. And as they grow, I will teach them the truth about life, the truth about human biodiversity, the truth about the reality of things, and if that forces my children out of the religion that they've been raised into, then so be it. I'll have that discussion with them when I get to that point. It's not something that I'm not open to.
Yeah.
I want to raise competent, well educated, um, socially aware, and intelligent children. And I think that's probably one of the best things that I can do for society.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and if they told you that, you know what, I have no interest in marriage, I'm just gonna do my own thing, you probably would be completely fine with that.
I would be. I would be, because I'm, like I said, I'm very sympathetic to MGTOW. I understand the reasons why men go MGTOW. I understand the pitfalls and the dangers of our society nowadays. Uh, if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. Like I said, I never intended to have children to pass on my progeny, to spread my seed and care about the next generation. So I don't really care, honestly, if my sons have grandchildren for me. It's not that big of a deal, honestly. And I've thought about this a lot. That's a hard thing to say, because most people would disagree with that. And on the one hand, my daughter, you can guarantee I'm going to have a grandchild, right? I mean, she's going to get fucked by somebody,
Right.
I will have a grandchild eventually, someday, but but I don't care. I have other things that I do with my life. I have interests in my life that, passing on and continuing my name and my generation is not the main focus of my life. One of the things that came to me from being red-pilled is actually focusing more on myself and what I care about doing and what I want to do with my life and the interests in my life. And in a weird way, that increased or that bettered the relationship with my wife as well.
Yeah.
Because, it's not that I had a bad relationship with my wife before. Don't get me wrong, but my wife, who is someone understanding female nature that wants a strong leader, right? Because she wants to live in a patriarchy. She looks up to her father. She wants somebody like her father, in a way, in sorts. I have my thing, and I do my thing, and I do many different things, and I work, and I have lots of different projects and things like that I do, and when I'm done, I come back, and it is more enjoyable to be with my wife, because she desires me, she wants me, because she misses me that I've been gone. And it's always nicer that way than opposed to being with someone all the time, right?
I totally agree with that.
When you're apart, you desire each other more. Well,
absence makes the heart grow fonder and all that.
Exactly. I mean, it's a nice cliche, but it is true. Yeah. It is true. And, this is something that that everybody should live by. Everybody should have hobbies. Everybody should have things that they do, because it leads to self-fulfillment, right? Especially as a guy, you need to have things that you do, things, right? Not putting pussy on a pedestal and chasing pussy all the time. The pussy will come to you if you are, good at what you do, whatever. I mean, if that's what you're looking for, that's PUA tactic and whatnot. But either way, it's not about that. It's about you. You should have things that you enjoy doing. You should focus on those types of things. Now, as a married guy, I can still tell you that. You should still focus on those types of things. Because the wife, she's always going to be there. Unless I totally fuck something up, or unless the society changes her and she decides she's going to go a different direction, I can't change that. But one thing I can do is focus on my things that I like doing, so that, separation makes the heart grow fonder. She wants me when I'm there. I've been on a long stretch of work. Just in the last 2 weeks, I've been working every day straight. I took a whole bunch of overtime, and I can already tell. And one of the things that I can tell is the need from my daughter. My daughter is more needy than my wife. And when I'm up and I'm awake before I head to work and things like that, she is all over me because she wants my attention. She needs me. She's young. She's a female. She needs attention, as any female does. But I can see it, right?
Right.
When you understand these types of characteristics, you can use them to your advantage, not in a gaming type of way, but you understand, and it can help in a way in benefiting relationships. I use that in some ways to help me with my marriage. I really don't like to say that I game my wife, like I'm some PUA, but they're women. It's always a game. It's always a game.
It's like, is that the film As Good as It Gets, where the Jack Nicholson is playing the novelist? I think it is.
That is my favorite line.
Right. It's always, you write women so well. And it's, you take away reason and accountability. There,
That's exactly right. Every time that movie is on TV, turn it to that channel just to see that line, and then I'll change it and move on to something.
Yeah.
But it's so true.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and if there's any consistency, that's the consistency, and I think
I got a funny story about that too. My family is hugely blue pill trad con. And we get together often for family dinners on Sunday nights and things like that. And I've learned my lesson. I don't bring up human biodiversity and female nature and things like that when I'm there talking with them, because nobody can relate. But one time I did. After dinner, we're all sitting around in the living room, 10 of us, 12 of us, whatever, having a discussion. And I brought up the fact that women are more emotionally reactive than men. And I bet you can guess what happened. Every single woman in that room turned and said, "No, I'm not." Immediately. and I looked at him and all said, "Yeah, you just proved my point." Every single one of them had an emotional reaction, took it personally. And it was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's female nature.
Yeah, essentially, in a nutshell. Yeah, it's been really good talking to married Red Pill. I imagine because of your weird shifts, you need to probably get some rest and do all kinds of things.
I do, yeah. I've been up. I just worked a 12-hour shift and got off and came and had a conversation with you.
I admire your constitution. I couldn't do that physically or mentally, so you're, I guess, fortunate that you're able to do that.
I try. There was a little bit of nerves and things like that. It helped with my conversational abilities, but you never know.
Yeah. But I think this is really interesting. I can post a link to your channel if you'd like. It's only one video, you said, but still, I can do it.
It is only one video. I mean, I'm under the same name. Anybody that can search me, Married Red Pill, it's really not that big of a deal.
Sufficient then. And maybe we can get him on for some more extensive discussion at a later date, possibly. But otherwise, I want to thank him for giving me his very a valuable time and talking to me, and hope that he has a good weekend, and I hope you enjoy the conversation in the audience. So everyone take care, and bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.